Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be starting episode 2 in our series, the Catacombs. Just doing deep dives into specific Diablo 2 Resurrected edits that you guys might be doing. Today's topic is going to be adding melee splash damage stat to an item. This item can then be added to a summon or used on your character or whatever you want to do. So obviously, if you guys are enjoying this kind of content, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, helps both of us out. Well, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and just roll right into it. So obviously, one of the first things we'll do is just grab all of our needed files. These are going to be located in Data Global Excel for all of our text edits. So let's go ahead and pull those out. So one of the first ones we're going to need is properties.txt. This is going to help us add in our new property to control the actual stat. Then we're going to grab item stat cost.txt. This is going to be the stat itself, the melee splash stat. From there, we're going to add missiles.txt. This is the actual missile that will do the damage and the effect of splash. And then finally, skills.txt to control the missile. So those are the four text files that we're going to need. So make sure you grab those out. Just for testing purposes and setting everything up, I strongly recommend creating a missiles reference for it as well. So I'm going to show you how we can just do that and make sense of everything. But again, we will kind of not need this in the end, but it's very helpful during setup. So we'll grab that, and then finally we need to set up a new string so that when our stat appears on an item, it actually has the name we want it to have. And so for that, we'll just go to skills.json and grab that out. So those are the 6 files total that you'll need. And again, at the end of it, you'll kind of only really need 5. And if you don't want it to appear on the item but be like a hidden stat, you can kind of do that too. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and jump right in with those text edits. And the very first edit is opening up properties.txt. So we're going to go ahead and expand the code column, expand the stat column, and we're going to do a search for hit-skill. So this is the property that controls when you hit an enemy, it casts a skill. Pretty self-explanatory there. We're going to go ahead and just clone that and then rename it, how we need. So here's our clone. I'm just going to add -splash at the end so we know what we're editing. And then I'm going to rename it to kind of match that, but I'm going to use underscores instead. So our dashes are the property name, and then the underscores are the item stat name. But that's the only change we need to do there. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Then we'll go ahead and open the stat that we're going to add. So again, we just added the property for, when you hit an enemy, cast a skill. And the name for that is going to be item, I believe, skill on hit. Let's see. Yep. So we're going to go ahead and clone that because, again, we're just kind of copying things right now. We'll edit them how we like later. And if you remember, I renamed the skill or the item stat name this. So we're just going to go ahead and copy and paste that. I'm going to update the ID just to kind of make sure everything's fine. And then I don't believe we need to change anything else. I lied. So we do need to go over here to the string column. This is going to be the actual kind of stat, the key that the JSON file uses for when that stat appears on the name. So we're just going to call this splash damage. Obviously, you can name this whatever you want. But other than that, we're not going to change the priorities and all that kind of stuff. I do recommend reading the data guide to customize things further. But we've changed everything we want here. We're going to go ahead and save that file. So our stat is officially made, and now it's basically time to add our missile and our splash effect to do it all. So we'll start with skills.txt, I guess. And you can pick whatever skill works best for you here. I personally like using a Frost Nova as a base, just because it's you can make the Frost Nova come out from the enemy that you hit with your weapon, and so it's just a perfect circle around your enemy. And to me, at least thematically, I like that shape. But use multiple shot. Use whatever you feel like gives you the shape or the effect you want. You can start controlling ranges and things like that once you've kind of picked out the base skill. But with all that said, I'm just going to go ahead and clone our Frost Nova here, and we'll use that as our base. So when you're creating new skills, instead of naming this like splash damage or something like that, we're just going to name it Frost Nova New. And the reason we're just doing that is, especially when you're first starting out, you don't want to get too complicated, or you don't want to name too many things with splash in them or damage, because it gets easy to get confused. Wait, which one links where and things like that. Obviously, as you start doing it more, it becomes much easier, so you can kind of name things, and you're not so worried about losing track of it. But if you're starting out, just name it something easy like Frost Nova New. We don't want it to have restricted to a certain character class, although I'm not sure that's strictly needed since it's going to be cast from an item. And we also probably don't need any skill description because, again, it's kind of cast from an item. So we're just going to go ahead and just remove those entries. For the missile, just to kind of set things up, what we're going to do is use a new missile, attach a missile reference to it so we can see it, and then once we have it looking how we want, then we can kind of hide that. So for the missile name, I'm just going to do Frost Nova MSL for missile. So Frost Nova MSL, and we'll just that's our new custom one. So that handles the server side missiles. Now we just got to find the client side one. So that's this guy here, again, MSL. So that's going to be our new missile name when we go to create that in a second. And I don't think we need to change anything else right now, but we will come back and edit this. If you wanted to mess with synergies and eat elemental types and how much source damage and all that. Anyways, we're all done with the skills. All we need to do is update the missile names. And then now finally we're ready to create the missile that's going to do our actual splash. So you guys might have guessed by now, because we're just kind of using Frost Nova as a base, we're just going to go ahead and use that missile as a base as well. Just kind of makes things a little easier for us. So we're going to go ahead and just clone that. And if you remember, we wanted to name it Frost Nova Missile or MSL. So we're going to go ahead and update that, update the ID. And let's see, we don't think we need to change anything else on this one either. All right, so we are all set. Again, we will come back and customize this later, but for now, everything is set. So our custom stat is created. Everything's linked on that. We also have our custom missile with our new skill that uses it. So the last thing we need to do is just add it to something. So for that, I'm just going to use a cube recipe, and we'll go ahead and just toss one of that in there. So for our little test recipe section here that uses one town portal scroll, we're going to create our maul that, our hammer that we created on the last episode. We're just going to create that again, but we're going to add this property. Again, this is the properties.txt. We're going to add the property name into the cube field for mod 1 section. For mod 1 parameter, that's going to be the skill ID of the new skill we made. So for us, that's Frost Nova New at ID 370. So we're going to go ahead and pop that in there. For mod 1 min, this is the chance to cast the skill. For us, we're going to leave it at 100% chance to cast. So every time we hit something, it's going to have a melee effect, splash damage effect. Obviously, if you're going for 50% chance or whatever, go ahead and change that. And we do not have like multiple levels, like if it was Blizzard or Firebolt or something. So it's just going to cast a level 1 melee splash damage kind of skill. So with that said, our cube recipe is done. We can go ahead and save that. And everything will technically work already, but what we're going to do is just add some references so we can see and read things properly. So for that, we'll go to Data, HD Missiles. We'll open that missiles.json file that we extracted. We'll format that. We're going to go ahead and just copy anything here. If you remember, again, our missile name was Frost Nova MSL. So that's what we're going to put for our kind of reference. And then now we're telling it what JSON to use. So we're just going to use the Frost Nova JSON because, again, that's best indication of what our skill looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in there. So now our skill has a visual, and now we need to give our stat a name. So we're going to go into our strings. We're going to go into our skills.json and put something in here. If you remember in the last video, we did use ID 50,000 and 50,001. So for this video, we are going to use 50,002. You can, skip. It doesn't have to always be perfectly sequential with no gaps, but we're just going to go in that fashion. If you remember, we named our string. So if we come back to the item stat cost here, we named our string key splash damage. So that's what goes in here for our key. And then now is our actual stat name that appears in game. And we'll just do something like melee splash damage. So now it has a name, everything's done. So we've fully created and linked everything. Now we're ready to start the mod and test and make sure it works. And then assuming I didn't do something incorrectly here, once we see it working, we'll show you how to customize it and get it looking exactly how you like. And I don't care what you guys say, we need a bigger hammer. 10 times scale wasn't enough. Need more. Just kidding, guys. All right, so let's go ahead and buy a town portal scroll so we can make our new item. And now you can see if we put on our new hammer has melee splash damage right there at the top, as the first stat. So now if we go around, and there we go. So now it's casting again, basically a Frost Nova, which is our melee splash effect. But maybe you don't want it to be, a full-on Nova that, has such a large range. So let's go ahead and exit out of here and show you how to edit that real quick. Very easy edit, but we're just going to open up our missiles.txt. We're going to go back down to our, new missile that we just made. We're going to come over here to, I'll lock that row, velocity, acceleration, range, all these kind of columns here. And this is where we can start tinkering with things. So with a range of 14, you might say, oh, that's too far. Let's try like a range of 4, something much smaller. The acceleration is, this is basically slowing it down. So as the Nova expands, it will slow down more the further it gets. So if you want it to be a more like instantaneous effect, where it's not really like a wave moving out, but more just like it hits that whole Nova area at the same time, then we can kind of remove that acceleration decrease. So now it has a range of 4, so it's much kind of smaller, and it happens much faster. We don't really need to mess with velocity and stuff in this case. So we'll go ahead and save those changes and then go ahead and test out our new feel, see how we like it. Again, because we're using this on an item effect, this Nova, in my opinion, worked kind of well, just because it will Nova from the monster you're hitting and not from yourself, like the normal skill would. So it makes it, perfectly centered around kind of the theoretical point where damage is coming from, the source of the weapon. So that's kind of neat. But anyways, you can see here's our 4. It's much smaller, happens much faster. Obviously, when we hide the missile, at the end, you won't even kind of see that, but we're just trying to gauge the exact range and effect it has so we can, get it how we like. So maybe you still think that's too big. We can go ahead and decrease it even further. You can decrease the velocity if it's still too much, and that'll shrink the missile even, further than that. But essentially, you can just get it how you want, and then you can open up skills.txt, remove the elemental type or change the elemental type. So another thing that might be kind of fun to do for some people, depending on what you're going for, is, where is it? Oh, whoops, opened up the wrong skills.txt. No wonder I was confused. Sorry about that. So if we scroll to the bottom here, and we look at our new skill, expand that out, and we go over to the elemental type section. Obviously right now it's set on cold and whatnot. We could take out for example, like the synergies, and maybe change this to RAND, and that stands for random. So now it'll just kind of randomly do fire, lightning, cold, poison, just different, things as you hit. So, that might be kind of fun depending on what you're going for. But it's essentially that easy to customize things how you like. Again, if you prefer to use multiple arrow or some other kind of splash capable effect, you can do that. But that's essentially it for creating it. And then once you have it how you like, we're just going to go back into our JSON folder here, into our missiles.json. And now instead of telling it to use the Frost Nova JSON, we're just going to put in null, so that we've told it, don't use anything. I don't want it to have a visual. So it's still going to perform all the same functions. You're just not going to see anything now. And now it will be your typical melee splash effect that you'll probably see in, plenty of mods. So let's go ahead and just make sure everything's working, and we can end the video there, and hope you guys have enjoyed it. So maybe next video we'll make the hammer 20 times bigger. What do you guys think? There we go. So you can see we didn't really, change the visual effects and stuff. So it's still doing like the ice explode animation and whatnot. But if we had put some more effort into, kind of streamlining this or making it look proper, then you could get it working how you wanted. But that's really all it is. Customize the stats and skills how you want. And if you don't have a merc that kills everything before you can get to it, you can test out the melee effect yourself. Again, remember we did make that zone much smaller. So a better way to test this would be to like crank up your monster density or something like that, because now it's a little harder to see the differences with such a small range. But I'm sure if I crank that back up, you'd be able to see it really easily. But with that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed. Thank you for sticking around until the end, and take care.